The night they walked in together, hand in hand like they owned the world, I stood frozen by the doorway, clutching a drink that had long lost its fizz, as if my fingers were the only things holding me up, as if letting go meant I would crumble in two. Nothing they smiled like traitors in a war they never admitted to fighting, and when she said "Hey babe" to him with that saccharine voice, she always saved for getting her way. I knew the truth in my chest before my mind caught up. She got my boyfriend. Not because he stopped loving me, but because she made him forget how I made him feel. I watched them dance in circles while my thoughts broke into pieces. Each step they took around the room crushed the memories we once made together. He didn't even look back, not once, not when she laughed at something I used to say, not when her fingers rested on the spot on his arm. I always reached for in crowded rooms. I left the party without saying goodbye, without causing a scene, just silence and the sound of my heels walking away from everything I thought was mine. I cried all night with the city lights blurring like the tears that would not stop, and I told myself I was done that. I would not chase someone who walked away so easily, but I was lying to myself, and I knew it because hearts don't heal just because you ask them to. They do it slowly, painfully, in ways that sneak up on you, like how one morning you wake up and the sun feels a little warmer, or how someone new holds the door for you and your breath catches, not because it hurts, but because you finally remember what hope feels like, and that someone was him, not the one who left, not the one who cheated, but the one who saw me standing alone weeks later at a bookstore, tracing the cover of a poetry book, and asked me if I liked Neruda, and when I said yes, he smiled with his whole soul and said, "I could hear that in the way you touched the pages, as if every word has weight," and I laughed for the first time in weeks. Not because he was funny, but because he was kind, because he looked at me like, okay. I was the poem, and that night we sat in a quiet cafe sharing stories like secrets, and time slowed down. Just enough for me to feel every second first time he held my hand. It was raining and we had no umbrella, and he didn't ask for permission. He just reached out, and I let him because his touch felt like something I hadn't known I was missing, something steady and warm and real. We stood under a flickering streetlight with the sky pouring down like it wanted to wash away every memory that had ever hurt, and for the first time, I let it, because in his eyes I saw something new. Not a promise, not a fantasy, but a beginning. And beginnings are rare and sacred and terrifying. He never asked about my past. Not the boyfriend who betrayed me or the friend who stopped being one. He only asked what I loved and what I feared and what I dreamed about, and every time I spoke, he listened, like my words were precious, like they deserved a home, and in return, he told me about his mother's garden and the book he never finished writing, and how he thought love wasn't just a feeling, but a choice, a daily act of being there, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, and that stuck with me like a melody you hum without knowing why. One night, we sat on his rooftop watching the stars play hide and seek with the clouds, and he turned to me and said, "I don't want to be the one who saves you. I want to be the one who stays with you while you save yourself." And I felt something shift inside me, something that had long been locked away. Because he saw me not as broken, but as brave, not as damaged, but as whole. And when he kissed me, it wasn't fireworks. It was fire, slow and steady, and burning through every wall I had built. And that's when I knew that she got my boyfriend, but I got the love I deserve, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that doesn't lie, the kind that waits patiently until you're ready to believe in it again. And as we lay there under the sky with our hands intertwined and silence wrapped around us like a blanket, I finally let go of what hurt and held on to what healed, because sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to exactly what your heart has been needing all along. The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, brushing over our skin like a whisper, and I watched him sleep with his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that somehow matched the calm I finally felt inside myself. It was strange to feel safe like this, not just because of the arms wrapped around me, but because of what they represented. They weren't a cage. They were a haven, a place where I could breathe without fear and speak without apology. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who cried herself to sleep, wondering what she lacked, the one who looked into the mirror searching for answers that weren't hers to carry. She gave too much. She waited. Too long she trusted the wrong hearts, but she never stopped believing, and maybe that's why she found her. Way to now to him, to this life that looked nothing like the one she imagined, but everything like the one she deserved. I slipped out of bed, quietly made coffee the way he liked it, and stared out the window, watching the world wake up, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel behind or broken. I felt present, and that was enough. He joined me moments later, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder, and he whispered, "You feel like home." And I turned to him and said, "You are mine." And we smiled, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. We had arguments, small ones. We disagreed on music, on politics, on which movie to watch, but we never fought to win, only to understand, and that changed everything. Because love isn't about getting your way, it's about finding your way together. Through storms and silence, through joy and chaos, he met my parents. They adored him. He took me to meet his sister. She hugged me like she already knew me, and when he looked at me during dinner, like there was no one else in the room, I knew this was no rebound, this was no distraction, this was the future I never dared to hope for. And when he asked me to move in, I didn't hesitate. I didn't overthink, because sometimes the heart knows what the mind is still too scared to accept, and I packed my things and left the apartment that still smelled like old memories I didn't need anymore, and I never looked back. I saw them once, months later, her and my ex walking down the street. They didn't notice me, and I didn't want them to. I felt nothing, not hate, not regret, just a quiet sense of distance, like they belonged to a past that no longer held weight. They made their choices, and I made mine, and mine led me to him, to laughter that echoed in our hallway at midnight. 2 slow dances in the kitchen, 2 quiet mornings with coffee, and touches that said more than words ever could. And one night, as we lay beneath the stars again, his fingers traced my cheek, and he said, "Thank you for finding me." And I smiled with tears in my eyes, because I finally knew what love felt like. Not the kind that leaves, not the kind that makes you question, but the kind that stays, that grows, that heals. So yes, she got my boyfriend, but I got the love I deserved, and I wouldn't trade that for anything, not even the life I once thought I wanted, because this was better, this was real, this was everything.